So I had to go get some more coffee for this one. I think it's a great topic. We're gonna dive in this morning. The idea is, and this is something that popped up on my Twitter feed. Um, in 2 or 3 sentences, what is the major difference between advanced Dungeons and Dragons in the early 80s? What's the difference between that and fifth edition? So someone is starting up a group locally and I want to attend, but I want to learn if I will be totally lost. Well, let me get a sip of my fresh coffee. This is my second cup of the morning, and we'll get right in. Because holy crap, are there a lot of differences. I already sort of dropped my answer right away in this thread, but I want to go through the other answers because there's a lot more detail that can be pulled out of this. And I think it's a really interesting scenario in the current climate that we're in with the conversation about the OGL for like 3.5 and then 5th edition because as far as I understand things, there is no and never was an OGL for first and second editions, um, meaning first edition and then Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and second edition AD&D, which is my favorite, the second edition AD&D. But also that's the version I grew up with. The original AD&D was early 80s. I was a child then, so I didn't get into it until Advanced D&D. Second edition, sorry, Advanced D&D, which is a little bit different. I mean, it's just a refined rule set at that point, but it's still used. And this is what I mentioned in my first comment here. One of the big differences between first and second edition versus third edition is the fact that it was all based off of the THACO system and it had original saving throws for different types of magic. Those are just two really quick examples. There's going to be more as we go through this thread. But what do I mean by that? So THACO was to hit armor class 0. And right now everything is based in 5th edition and I think it's been this way since since 3rd edition or since 3.5. Everything is based off of um, a difficulty check to hit an armor class value. So um, you have a monster in front of you that has armor class 22. Well, you need a 22 or better to hit that mob. It's a very simplified version. So you roll the d20, add your modifiers or subtract your modifiers, whatever the case may be, and then whatever you're left with is the number. And did you hit or did you get beyond the value that you're trying to go up against? It was way more complex with THACO because you went positive and negative. So you went up to 10 on the positive side, and then you went negative 10 on the other side. And positive 10 was really bad armor class, and negative 10 was really good armor class. So you wanted your characters to have as far down in the negative value as you could. And when you rolled in combat to see whether or not you were going to hit something, you were rolling THACO. You were rolling to hit armor class 0. 0 being a pure roll of the d20 that has no modifiers attached, positive or negative. So that was just it. And then everything was based off of that with your mods and leveling up and +1 swords and getting more modifiers as your character advanced and so on and so forth. It was definitely more of a math-based system than the way it currently is in 5th edition. But one of the things that I really liked about first and second edition was the different save systems, like the magic saves, because you didn't just have this dex save, wisdom save, and because no, it was you have death magic. I don't even remember them all. Paralyzation. It's been so long since I've played, but those things. It was like save versus magic, save versus death, save versus paralyzation, save versus wands, I think maybe. I really don't remember all the different saves, but those were some of the things that you would save against. You had all these different types of magic that you saved against versus just you're rolling against a statistic to see whether or not you saved against things. So the current 5th edition simplified things a lot more. And then I also make a generic statement that um, first and second edition had a lot less hand holding than fifth edition, where everything nowadays is handed to players on a silver platter with high success chances. And there's some great comments here. AD&D favored the monsters and asking the players to be creative with few special abilities, and this is important, fewer special abilities and just basic equipment. Um, Fifth edition favors the players and loads the character up with actions, special abilities, and magical items. AD&D would arguably be low fantasy, while fifth edition is high fantasy. I kind of agree with that, pretty much. Um, Someone here says AD&D was grittier, more dangerous, and progression was hard earned. Characters learned to run, That's a very important one. You do learn to run. And if you've ever tuned into any of the campaigns that I run, even the fifth edition campaigns that we've been running the last couple of years, I don't do a lot of the default fifth edition stuff because I'm a big fan of the players should always feel like death is just around the corner. You should never feel like success is something that's guaranteed. I won't kill your characters off, but I will make you bleed for things. But that was something that AD&D did very well. You had to learn how to run and find alternatives to fighting. Says here, players represent the character and not the other way around. The character was not a superhero avatar for the player. This is a cool thing. My buddy Ted, who I learned a lot from and I consider my D&D mentor, always had this saying where you have PC status and NPC status. So uh, PC status just means that you have something about you that transforms you into being something more than an average NPC. The average NPC is like, has three fives and maybe a couple tens for stats, but you've got some 12s and some 14s, maybe an 18 even in your stats. So you have something that allows you to transcend what it means to be ordinary. But it doesn't make you a god. It just means that you are some sort of you have the potential to be heroic because of these stats, which allow you the player character status. But it's not guaranteed success. Um, Here's another good example. It says there's no challenge rating and encounters aren't balanced to be winnable. Don't assume you can beat everything you meet. When facing problems, the answer isn't going to be on your sheet. You can't roll a solutions skill or cast solve problem. You sometimes have to describe how you handle things to figure out if it's going to work or not. Um, in one campaign, the entire group was killed. That's definitely happened. One of the things that my buddy Ted used to do to me was anytime I tried to make my journeys easier by getting a wagon or horses or something, he would find ways to threaten those ease of uses, those convenience factors, because the campaign world was meant to be dangerous. So if I had a horse because I was trying to bypass random encounters on the road, well, then you just kill the horses off. Want a big wagon to carry way more loot? Well, now you're at a higher risk of getting attacked by bandits and dragons who want to take your stuff. And I feel like that can be done in 5th edition, but I feel like many people who use 5th edition just go with the stock scenarios because it's easier and it gives that instant gratification that a lot of the modern players will like. Um, what else we got here? People say you used more imagination in the 80s. Maybe, maybe. I think that one's going to depend on the people. Um, I'm trying to find if anybody talks about like the magic systems, and I need to look up the magic saves in AD&D. Is this gonna? Here it is. These are the save words. I couldn't remember what they were. Paralyzation, poison or death magic, rod, staff or wand, petrification or polymorph, breath weapon, and spell. So, and this is the cool thing. Every class had a different modifier. Like different classes were able to save against different things better or worse than the other classes because of their inherent you know, classness. The rogue is going to be better at this, the priest is going to be better at this, the wizard is going to be better at this. And that all kind of became homogenized with 5th edition. Sorry, I had to look this up because it was bothering me. There's also yeah, anyway, that's a great list. So that was what I was getting at earlier. Um, Someone says I don't think there's a difference between it being low and high fantasy. All the hallmarks are the same. I think this is the thing here. 5th edition plays tightly with loads of options, which ramps the power curve for player characters. Um, whereas AD&D makes things much more difficult, and you're not front loaded with all sorts of abilities and solutions. There was a lot of figuring out as you went along, coming up with creative solutions, whereas in 5th edition they've got tons of rules that allow you to just roll your way out of situations with less role play. I feel like that's perhaps a fair way to look at it. It says here, okay, this is literally what this person is saying. I just read this comment here. It said the older edition didn't rely on dice rolls to determine every outcome. A lot of it was dealt with role play and problem solving on the part of the players at the table. And someone replied and said every outcome, so it's more a game of chance than experience. Um, so yeah. Also, yeah, much fewer hit points for everything. Yeah. Like I've seen in the fifth edition, like some people are like difficulty check of 35, and I'm like, why? Why do you have to like? You've added so many modifiers to everything that you're having to come up with this impossibly high number to hit. The old system, AD&D, I feel like kept it very simple and rooted in very basic math. But again, THACO is hard to get your brain around if you've never worked with it before. And the save versus magic system, the saving system is a lot different because you have different types of magic and wands and polymorph petrification that you're saving, and breath weapons and different classes having different values for those things. So it was just like I think the best, honestly, the best comment I've seen apart from the rules, this person, Spedworm, saying the older edition didn't rely on dice rolls to determine every outcome. A lot of it was dealt with through role play and problem solving on part of the players at the table, which is why every game that I've ever ran and the games that I prefer to participate in are role play heavy and don't really rely on the rules that much because the rules are just there as sort of guidelines. I will say this. My wife, Chris, is not a huge gamer, but she got into tabletop because of our project, The Weave in the Void. And because we originally made that a fifth edition world, it no longer is the case. We've now made it system agnostic. Um, I would argue that Chris would never have gotten into tabletop gaming if it weren't for fifth edition. And the reason I say that is one of the things that fifth edition did very well, in my opinion, is the onboarding of new players with a very simplified rule set. They streamlined it for the instant gratification generation of players who just want to get in quick and see quick rewards, quick advancement. Um, everything's quick and easy and it's fast paced. And that part of fifth edition has been streamlined very well. And there's nothing wrong with that. Um, if you're someone who prefers the more manual method, then AD&D is probably going to be what you prefer. I personally prefer second edition AD&D. I really think that's my current favorite um, out of all the systems I've played over the years, but that's just a personal preference, and it's basically AD&D with some refinements to it. Food for thought. Love to hear your comments and thoughts. Drop them down in the below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon if you haven't already done so we can keep having these conversations. Support with a super thanks if you can. Join as a member. There's 3 different tiers. Don't forget the Patreon page for our fantasy world, tabletop game, point and click adventure game, and book series. Discord. See you in the next episode. Have fun, everybody.